I'll welcome everybody that's here right now. So thanks for taking time out of your day to join us today on our Ready, Set, Smart webinars. We're here to provide you weekly opportunities to highlight a lot of things that we have going on with SMART, and there's so much happening, and we're so excited to be able to give you that workflow that, of course, during this blended learning opportunities that you might have to benefit your students. So we're going to actually show you today how to create, different activities and lessons focused on instructional strategies that you might have heard of, or maybe not, or maybe show you a different way of doing it in your classroom. So my name is Jody Bean, and I'm going to be your moderator today, and I have the fabulous Casey Dramatic with me. I'm in Portland, Oregon, and it's very smoky outside, so it's a great place to be right now, and I'll let Casey introduce herself in just a second, but today's webinar is going to be focusing on note-taking and how to engage your students in that process, because we know that note-taking is very powerful, but how do we get our students to make meaning with their notes? And hopefully today you'll be able to take a couple things and put it in your tool belt and be able to use it with your students tomorrow. So before we get started with Casey, I thought I'd run through a few little housekeeping items for you. And depending on your device which you are viewing on this webinar, you'll notice either at the top or the bottom of your screen that you have a few options to interact with us today, and we'd love the chat. So please use the chat to ask questions, and then I'll be moderating, and we'll have a conversation together. But if there are any questions as we go along that might be good of the order for the whole group, I will ask Casey, and we'll address them during the presentation, and we'll integrate them. But we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. So if you want to hang on, then we can kind of have our own little personal power time for that. Also, for those of you who are participating today live right now, you will get a professional development certificate, which I'm going to provide the link in the chat. And then also there'll be a survey, and it's really important for us to get some feedback that helps us with our future webinars and what the needs of the customers are. So please fill out that survey. And then when you submit that survey, you're going to get that claim for that PD certificate. So at this point, I want to turn things over to Casey so we can just dive into the note-taking process. Hey, Casey.
Hello, welcome guys. So I'm going to have you join us because active participation is always the best type of participation, right? In order for us to really get a feel for what our kids can experience through some of the tools that we're going to talk about today to help with note-taking, it really helps for us to kind of see it. So if you can open a tab on your web browser, and I'm actually going to do the same thing. So I'm going to walk through exactly the steps that I'm going to have you guys do. I'm going to be both a student and a teacher right now. If you will open a web browser and go to hellosmart.com, this is a way that we can have our students join our sessions. You do not need to sign in today. You're not going to be my students long term, and you're not going to need to get back to this task to finish it later, like tomorrow or the next day. You can just join as a guest. I'm going to do the same thing. You can enter my class ID, which is 11311. So one of the nice things with Smart Learning Suite Online is our teachers have one class ID that our students use to access any of their lessons, rather than having to have a different ID for every lesson that we do, which is really great. Once you enter the class ID, you'll enter your first name, it's fine, or if you want to enter your superhero name, that works for me too. Whatever floats your boat, and I'm going to join as a guest. You'll notice as you guys are joining today that you will see the same title screen on the student side as I do on my teacher side, which is really nice. One of the things that we can do is we have the option of moving our lesson between teacher and student pace so that our students can follow along for the ride, or we can release the lesson to them and let them move along through the lesson on their own independently, or we can go back and forth as needed, which is pretty nice. So Jody will add the information on how to join in case you're still trying to get connected. But again, you're going to go to hellosmart.com. You can join me as a guest today. You'll enter class ID 11311, your first name, your superhero name, whatever you would like to use. And that should bring you up to a screen that looks like the one over here on my right. All right, so we'll continue along the way. So I just wanted to point out really quickly that we have partnered with Avid, and our partnership with Avid is really, really nice because we know that there's a lot of amazing things that are happening through Avid, different things that we're working on specifically for example, note-taking. I think that's a really big component of the Avid model. And so we were able to really work with them and take a look at what they're doing successfully for students, and then how our tools can help support that. So Jody will be adding some links for you throughout the chat, maybe in a little bit. But we have, for instance, if we click on this top link, it will open our Smart Exchange that allows us to access all of this ready-made content that's all Avid aligned, which is really great. There's pages and pages of great things that you can use to support your students. And then we also have a new website that you can access that, again, talks about our partnership and also has some eBinder enhancements, some teaching toolkits, resources, things along those lines. So if you are someone that is using the Avid model, we have a lot of tools built in to support what you are doing right now with your students in general. If you are not using Avid within your district, that's okay too. Note-taking is an important component for learning in any respect. So before we get too far, I wanted to take a quick minute to introduce myself. My name is Casey Germanic. I am also a Senior Professional Development Specialist with Smart Technologies. While I work for Smart now, I am from the classroom. I have 20 years in education. I spent most of it all of it in the elementary level. The first part I jumped around to different grade levels. The last 11 years as a gifted and talented specialist that got to work with kinder through 5th grade students. We had a pull-out program, which is pretty exciting, lots of fun. I am from the Texas area. I live in a town called New Braunfels, Texas. It's between San Antonio and Austin. So if you're ever driving between the two, you'll drive through New Braunfels and you can wave to me from the highway, or you can stop at our very exciting, very big gas station, Buc-ee's, right by where I live as well.
I love Buc-ee's. I'm telling you, I go to Buc-ee's every time I'm in Texas. I'm not kidding. It is part of it has to be there. Like I have to go.
Yes, you have to stop. Everyone has to stop. People make there's gas station signs for like 100 miles, your next Buc-ee's, and people will go out of their way to stop there for sure. One of the things I also want to let you guys know is that this is a partnership. This is a quick 30 minutes today, 40 minutes today together. But if you have questions or need resources or want to get some more information about anything we talk about today, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Jody. We're here to support you at any time. You can also follow me at KCG316 on Twitter if you are so inclined. I love learning from educators. All right, so let's get started. Today, our essential question is really, how can Smart Learning Suite enhance the note-taking process? How can we make note-taking fun, a collaborative experience, something that's really active for students to do, and meaningful? I think the meaningful part is one of the important words there. I think Jody and I have had many conversations about, we can see students taking notes, but that doesn't mean that they're doing anything with their notes, and also doesn't mean that they know how to take notes in a way that's going to support their learning. Jody, anything you have to add on to that?
No, I like what you just said, is like how to make notes meaningful, because that's really what it's at, right? For that retention. If they're going to spend so much time taking the notes, it's really important for them to value what they're doing and know that it is a relevant piece of their learning. And I like that you made it say meaningful, because that's really what it's all about, that note taking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to talk some more about that as we're going along today. So speaking with that mindset of meaningful note taking, I really want us to think about the why, or the why. I think that a lot of times our students hear us say, okay, we need to take Cornell notes on what we're learning today, or we need to do a 3-column note taking on something. But we don't ever get into the purpose, the why. Why are we having our students do this? I know I had a conversation with my daughter about why do I have to write all these notes? And she would have all the notes, but she never thought about what to do with them after she wrote them. So that was a really important conversation for us to have is, hey, the purpose of these notes is. So I really want to get a feel for you guys. What do you think the why is? Why should we spend time, first of all, teaching our kids how to take notes effectively? Spending the time having our kids taking notes. Why should we do that? Why is it an important component of our teaching? And then I also want us to think about the how. Like what are some different types of note taking that we encourage our students to learn about and do? So I have a shout it out right here. I'm going to start the shout it out for class. You'll see that you have, as a student, you're going to have a little white box where you can type your response. And we have two categories, benefits of note taking and then the types of notes that students can take. So you can share to each one. So like if I was thinking, I know my daughter is more artistic, so sketch notes are really big for her. So that's a type of note taking. I can click the category, choose type of note taking, and send that on out. So I love taking a look at some of your different responses to help increase creativity. I love this response. I don't think a lot of people equate note-taking with creativity, which I think is sad. I mean, there's a lot that can be had in note-taking and the way that kids process information and the way that they connect that information that can lead to a lot of creativity for sure. So I love that look at that perspective. Learning how to organize the meaning of things. That's a tough strategy for kids to be able to organize. They have all this information coming at them. What do they do with it? What does it mean? How does it make sense? Notes focus on the target or the main ideas. Absolutely. I had one of my daughter's history teachers is a friend of mine, and he was struggling because his students looked like they were very actively taking their Cornell notes every day. And so he's really pumped about their first assessment. He thought they're going to kill it because of all the notes that he was seeing and how active kids were being. However, he was surprised on that first assessment. The kids did not do so well. And so we really had to talk about why, what was happening. They looked like they were engaged. They looked like they were active. Their pages were being filled up with words. Well, they were focusing on the wrong things. So really helping students to understand what they're looking for. Active listening, note taking, zoom in on what is important of the topic, and it helps increase grades. Absolutely, if they're used well, right? If kids know how to use their notes, that can really impact positively their results. Listening skills, comprehension, great. Active learning. Star, 3-column notes, flip charts, mind art, or graphic organizers, prayer model. I love to outline the chapter first, and I could highlight the points and write the details. So it's so interesting. Everyone also tackles note taking differently, right? Some people are very linear and love that taking notes in an outline format. My notes are more out there, more of a mind map is the way that I organize my thinking. And so everyone sort of takes note taking in a different direction when they know how to use it effectively. If we just I know someone showed me how to do an outlining notes, and I was not always effective there because I focused too much on the outline and what it should look like rather than what I was into it. What about Jody? Did you have a favorite, or do you have a favorite way of sort of taking notes?
I honestly, and I know you're going to show this, but I was a former avid elective teacher, and so of course Cornell Notes was just really important and vital piece of my classroom. And I just remember having a conversation with one of my students who was on an IEP, and it was just so difficult for him. And he just gave me this look, and it was just like that puppy dog look, like, can I just do it my way? And I was just like, yeah, what does that look like? And instantly he started drawing, like little visuals, because he loved to doodle. And so it was really fun to watch him go through this process. And it was just like that aha moment, like, oh, this isn't about always about a structure. It's about making the connections. And I'm a doodler like you, Casey. And so I love to just draw over. And I don't know if you guys can see in the picture, but I keep my little highlighter and everything with me because it makes sense to me. And that's really what it's all about. It has to make sense for each individual student.
Absolutely. And I think one of the nice things, I use Cornell Notes with my 3rd through 5th graders as well in my gifted classroom. But one of the great things was I shared this structure with them, and we talked about why the structure was effective, but I also gave some freedom within that structure, right? So I had some kids, their Cornell Notes were very visual, lots of images and doodling and things along those lines, while others were a lot more text heavy. It was really dependent on the student and how they organize their information. But it took me teaching the structure first and really making sure they understood it before they could then have the freedom to kind of go in a different direction or make it sort of more their own. They had to understand that why first and how to use those notes constructively. So we talk about the benefits of note-taking. We talk about the types of note-taking that we do. Now let's talk about what's happening in our classroom. So right here, I have a little page that I'm going to have you guys in just a moment. I'm going to have you reflect on your students. So kind of think about your students in a generalized manner. We're not thinking about, this one particular student. We're thinking about students in general that you've been working with. Are your students more likely to say, I get the note-taking process. It makes sense to me. I'm killing it. I've got the most important content. Is that who they are? Or are your students in general really making really beautiful notes, but they don't always use them in a purposeful way? So they have these pretty notes that you can look at with highlighting and images and underlining and things like that, but they're not taking it beyond that one moment. Or perhaps you have some students that don't know how to use the notes at all. They don't really even know they're kind of lost at like what the purpose of taking notes are, or how it works, or why they want to do it, or even what structure to take on. Or do you have those students who are like, what? Why do we have to take notes? Isn't that what the teacher's for, right? So we're gonna have, and you'll notice right now, as a student, you have no ability to move any of the emojis right now. However, in just a moment, I'm gonna change this page to make it an active page that you guys can interact with and move the emoji based on your students as a whole, generally. So right over here, I could have done this ahead of time, but I wanted to do it in real time with you guys today. So I'm gonna click on these people, and underneath on the teacher side, you'll notice that I have two options. I could make this an individual handout activity where each of you would get your own copy. Think of it as you going to the copy machine and making a copy for every single student in your classroom. Or I can make it a collaborative workspace where I can put you guys into small groups, or even the whole of us all together and work in one space. Today, I want to look collectively at us as a whole. So I'm going to make this a collaborative workspace. It's very quick, just like that. Now you'll notice that on your side, it's waiting for the teacher to assign teams. Notice that I could put you guys into smaller groups. I could do one group of 3 and one group of 4, things along those lines. Or I want to put everyone today on the same team because I want all of us to really look at everyone's responses and think about them. So I'm going to put everyone on one team. This will now
I love this.
Stay. And now you can drag how your students collectively sort of work with this. So it's a very different experience. Note-taking is hard, guys, in my opinion. I think there has to be a whole moment of teaching how to take notes, different types of note structures, things along those lines, which makes it challenging.
Hey, Casey, I'm just thinking out loud, but I love this activity and the fact that everybody has a voice. But now what you can do, and it looks like you're going to probably do it, is you're going to maybe graph it. I mean, like, what a visual. Like, this is a powerful type of activity that you can use even in the note-taking process. So I love what you're doing right now.
So we can quickly, because I can drag all of these, I have control to drag these and really look at where we land as a whole too. Move this guy out of the way. So you can really look. Now, if we look at where we are, first of all, none of us feel like we have students that are just killing the process, and that's okay, right? Especially at this stage of the year, but I think just in general, that's a really tough one to do. But we all are, we definitely have some people that feel like, you know, we have really pretty notes, but we're not always using purposely. That's where my daughter came in, right? She had gorgeous notes, but what she didn't get was the fact that she was then supposed to use those notes to study, to ask questions of her teachers, ask questions of her peers, get clarification. She wasn't doing all of those next steps. And I think that's where a lot of our students get lost too, is they follow our directions of, hey, I got to make these notes, and they make them, but then they don't do those next steps. And that's what we want to talk about today, is getting our kids to take the notes, but then use them for those follow-up tasks, to study, to review, to ask questions, to seek clarification when they're confused or lost, to use them to support themselves in homework, things along those lines. And then we have a group of us that we're lost, right? We have kids that either don't think that they should take notes at all, which is a hard time. We've talked about kids are fast movers today. They take in information so much more quickly than we had to when we were growing up, and so they are looking at the world slightly differently. So having them slow down and take those notes can be a little bit of a difficult thing. So today, hopefully, we're going to give you some tools to help these kiddos, and actually all of these kiddos, move up towards the portion where they feel like they have a reason, they know why they should take notes. So one of the things that I love to do with my students, because Jody and I talked about, we all sort of take in information differently, and the way we organize information, we want to handle it differently. I was very much of a mind mapper. My brother is very linear. He is an outliner. When you look at his notebooks versus my notebooks, they're very, very different. And so I often like to give my students just this blank space that they can really capture their ideas as well. So sometimes in note-taking, letting go of the structure and letting them have some freedom can be good. So right here, as a teacher, on my left side, I have this little plus button here, and I have a whiteboard space that I can add at any time. Now, when I add this whiteboard space, right now it's set up for only me, the teacher, to write on. But I can convert this so that my students can work on it independently. So I can, again, click these people here. I could put you into individual handouts. I'm going to put you guys into small groups, though. And what I want you guys to think about in your small groups is I want you to think about what are some ways that you think you could help students be more successful in leveraging their notes. So we're going to brainstorm some ways that students can be more successful in leveraging their notes. So I'm going to choose collaborative workspace. This time, however, instead of putting us all on the same team, I'm going to put us on 2 teams. So I'm going to choose 2 teams. It will throw you guys into teams. One of the really great things is I also have the opportunity to move students around. So if I don't think students should be in a group together, I have the flexibility of dragging and dropping them into a different team fairly easily. So now I'm going to start my workspace. If you forgot your purpose, remember you're going to be sharing what are some ways that we could help students be more effective in using their notes. How could we help them be more effective in using their notes? On the left side over here, you have the ability to use these different tools. So if I want to type something, I can click on this A and I can type here. One of the ways that I think we could help students be more effective is giving some choice how they take notes. Now, one of the great things that you'll notice over here is we had someone add an image right while I was typing my content. When I click on here, I can click the down arrow and I see that Jody added this image. And I can see that she added this text, talking to each other. I think that, Jody, I'm so glad you put that. I think that's something that's very lost. Here's Beanie added this. that's very lost in today's note taking. We think about it, sometimes it can be very isolating where students are just writing away, but there's not that conversational piece. I think that think, pair, share, meeting up and comparing notes to each other can be really helpful. But what are some ways that you've gotten kids to talk to each other about their notes, or how has it been effective for you?
I think one of the things when I'm on here, it's really great that I can bounce ideas off in this collaborative workspace. So like I'm looking at the other people that are in my group and how nice it is to know that I have other brains going with this. So it makes me feel like I can jump in at any time and make it work for me, especially if I'm one of those students who just needs a little push. This is a really great place for me to start.
Yeah, so I don't always start with giving my students free reign with a blank white space. I often want to teach my students some different note-taking types, so like 3-column notes, 2-column notes, Venn diagrams, Cornell notes. I like to teach them several structures, mind mapping, sketch notes, all of those things. I like to teach them different structures first before I give them full reign of an empty space so that they have some idea, some schema to draw on when they start to use more of a blank space to construct their notes. And then also, like I love that Jennifer over here said, teaching students about the purpose of notes. I think when we teach students the purpose of notes and how to use them, I think that once they have a good understanding of that, that's when you can give them more of this blank space as well. Ooh, I love this one. Small chunks of info to repeat and review often. That was Terry. I love that. That is such a good point. Small chunks. I was working out this morning with, and they were talking about, he was like, I'm chunking your directions, giving you 3 things to do at a time so that you can remember to do them. Teaching our kids to do the same thing is really impactful and helpful as well. And you'll notice that you are able to add text or images. So again, that's great for our students who are more visual. If they want to do more of a mind mapping situation, they have that opportunity also. And again, I love that I can click on any of these and see who's contributing what content in a workspace also. Jody, any questions so far?
No, I think, and Terry, we have Terry Lynn that's on, and I'm so glad that you're adding to the chat. So and we can talk about this after, but she's been using SLSO for 8 days. So congratulations, I know.
Congrats.
And so, yeah, and so one of the things is she was asking about is like when they are doing their notes, it's not saving from day to day. What am I doing wrong? And I'll start this, and then Casey, please add to it. So Terry Lynn, one of the things that might be happening is that if you're having your students sign in as a guest, chances are that the notes might not be saving. Have your students sign in with their credentials for what they use at school. Then at that point, your notes should be saving. If that's not the case, we need to know. But Casey, what do you think?
Yeah, so one of the great things about Smart Learning Suite Online from the student side and from the teacher side is that everything saves automatically. So if you, but you do want your students signed in. I had you guys join as a guest today because you don't need to come back to this tomorrow. You're not going to come back and continue working tomorrow. So it wasn't important for you guys to be signed in. If I were doing with my students, I would have them sign in with their credentials so that one, it saves their content, and if they need to finish it the next day or from home, especially in this blended learning environment that we're in, we have some students that are working from home, some students that are working full-time in the classroom. We have students that are doing a hybrid where, a couple days in class, couple days from home. We have such a wide range of ways that students are working today that saving piece is really important. Have your kids sign in with their credentials, and it should save, and they should be able to open it from week to week to week and still see all of their work.
Yeah.
All right, so moving along quickly, we were going to talk about 5 ways to enhance the note-taking process using SLSO. So one of the things that we have are some ready-made activities like graphic organizers that we can pull and leverage really quickly, but we can also use any that we already have saved or created. So I have a bunch of graphic organizers that I made within Google Slides that I can use as well and put them into Smart Learning Suite Online. We can convert static content where kids usually just see it and look at it and make it interactive like we were doing earlier today. We also can mark up text in SLSO, which is really important. That's a big note-taking process as well. And then we're going to talk about the online toolkit, SLSO, and how we can leverage that, and then the ability to share. So here I have just an article, and with an article, one of the things that we want to make sure our students do is that they highlight and they annotate over their article. So there's a couple of things that we can do. First of all, as a teacher, I can come in here really quickly and I can spend a minute labeling the number of paragraphs. So I can do that before we get started. I could, and then before I make it a handout, my students can work on and leverage. My students will be able to use a variety of tools to work on this. The other thing that you'll notice is at the top, I have some different icons that they can drag and drop over different areas. So if there's a place where they have a question, they don't understand something, they can just drag that question mark to that spot. Or if there's something that really hit a light bulb for them, they can drag and connect. You might also notice that I have this ability to play directions. I can hit play and I can record myself saying some directions for my students, or even reading the passage if I wanted to as well, to help my students. In this case, I just read some directions to them. So I'm going to convert this page, and instead of making it a workspace, this time I want to make it a handout where each student gets their own copy. So now if you hit start on your side, you're going to notice that you have some tools over here. So these tools, if you want to highlight something that was important with your pen, you can click on the highlighter tool and you can highlight something that grabs your attention. You can use the margins and the text tool to write little notes that, that stood out to you. If something caught your attention and you can make a connection to it, I can drag this guy down and really mark where that place was so I can remember, oh, I really made a connection there. So you can really use these tools in a variety of ways. This was just a PDF that I imported. And then in Smart Learning Suite Online, you can add objects and infinitely clone them like I did. So this was just a PDF, and then I added these once I added this into Smart Learning Suite Online. Notice on my side, I can see all of my students who have hit start, and I can click on their names and I can see what they're doing, how they're doing. Notice that my students can also hit that play button. You see that play button on your side too, where you can hit play and hear the directions being played for you, so that your students can go back to directions, or again, I could read that passage if that was going to be helpful for students as well. So we can come in and check on each of our students. I see some important details that are being marked. I see someone adding an image for the glacier. Awesome. We see some highlighting. So see how quickly students are able to really annotate and work on this. The great thing is that they can come back to this at any time. Today we've been set to teacher pacing where I'm controlling things, but I can also move it to student pacing. So for instance, I have right below here, one of our ready-made activities is Cornell Notes. So we have one that's already created that I can add to any of my lessons. So I can make this an individual handout. My students, if I turn this over to, and I can hit start, if I turn this over to you guys, to student pacing, I can now go back and forth. So if I needed to go look really quickly at my notes to find some important vocabulary words or some things that I marked up, and then come back here to start filling in my Cornell Notes, I can do that. So your students have that ability to come back and forth. They have those question marks that are highlighting different places that they can go ahead and put what questions they have, fill in their notes, do their summaries, things along those lines. So you have the opportunity to use, we have, I think, like 20 plus graphic organizers with full of great note-taking tools for your students that you can leverage and use with a variety of different tasks that you have. Any questions, Jody, before I continue?
No, we're good. We're getting them answered in the chat, so we're doing great.
Awesome. So basically what we can really do is we can supercharge our lessons with a variety of tools. So we have some game-based activities that I'm going to model for you guys in just a moment. We also have these ready-made activities. So notice here's those graphic organizers. We have 21 different graphic organizers that we can pull in. So if you need a 3-column notes or a 2-column notes or a Venn diagram or Cornell notes or the scientific method, you can easily pull those in with other content that you've, so if you had a PDF that you wanted to start with, like an article like I had, and then layer in Cornell Notes or layer in a T-chart, something along those lines, you can do that. And then we also have, which is really important in the note-taking process, is some ready-mades on activating prior knowledge. In order for our students to really understand how to use those notes, they've got to know where they're starting from. What do they already know? Where are they already coming to us from? And then what are they going to then do some activities related around those, use some graphic organizers for those note-taking. And then the other thing I love is the question reflection piece. Because remember, that's where we talked about a lot of times our kids miss the boat, is they take those notes, but then they don't use them for anything. So having kids getting kids to understand how to use those notes to then reflect on their learning or to answer questions about their learning is great. So helping them see how all of these pieces work together. And all of these are built for us, which is doubly nice, right, Jody? Time.
Exactly. I love this. I love that I don't have to spend that much time. Like I can spend my time on my students and not on my content creation. And I love that these are already ready-made.
Exactly. So I'm going to just pop over really quickly to show you kind of what this looks like, where it is. So I have, when you go into, let me actually expand my screen for a minute so you can see the whole thing. So when I go to my Smart Learning Suite Online and my dashboard, you have a bunch of different tools. So like here's where I can import my PowerPoints, my PDFs, my Google Slides, things like that. But underneath here, I also have those ready-made. So when I click on graphic organizers, here are all the graphic organizers that are available to us, and they are ready to go. You will notice in each one, there's a little preview button. If you click on that, it'll show you one possible way to use that graphic organizer, but these graphic organizers have so many different ways that they can be used and leveraged. If you want one, you just touch it, and it's ready to go just like that. It's very quick and painless to have something added to your content and to be able to use it. So, but going back to my lesson over here, and I'll go back to side-by-side view, the game-based activities. I think this is an important element that we don't always think about with note-taking. So we don't always equate games and note-taking together, but they really are important. So here's a Glacier vocabulary activity. This is where I would really have my students learn the how. Why are they using, how do they leverage these notes that they have? So perhaps I have my students complete this task, this little game right here, and then I say, hey, I want you to pull out your notes. I want you to see, do you have all of these vocabulary words somewhere in your notes? Do you have them highlighted? Do you have them sketched out or drawn out in a way that makes sense to you? Or check to make sure that what you put down goes aligned with what you see here. So if a student realizes, oh, you know what, I didn't realize that climate is not this, they can then go and fix their notes at that time and really have that conversation with themselves about, hey, there's a few gaps in what I put in my notes based on what I'm seeing here, but it's time for me to adjust those so that they can help me later when I have a summative assessment or something along those lines. And there's a variety of games that we can play and build for our students to help with this task, super sorts, match them ups, all sorts of things.
Well, and what I love about this, Casey, what I love about what you're showing is that all the different types of activities that we have, there's some that can lead itself to a Socratic seminar, like have that, or philosophical chairs. Like if you're really having that in-depth conversation and you have your notes, your students are already halfway there. Just add some game-based learning activities, and then, if there's any posing questions, bring up another shout it out, and now you have an instant Socratic seminar ready to start.
Absolutely. So what if this was an excerpt from the article that we read, and with like a close experience, and then the kids were filling that in and then using that to leverage the Socratic seminar that they might be doing. And maybe you're going to have them use a shout it out. Notice that I have this ability to add an instant shout out. So maybe I'm going to add an instant shout out and have my students start sharing questions or things that are running through their minds or connections that they've made that they'll look at first before they get into their fishbowl for the seminar. So that way that they have kind of all this stuff working in their minds before they actually start their conversations as well.
I love that it's all one-stop shop. Like I haven't seen you leave the Smart Learning Suite Online. Like I feel like you can do a lot of that transition is gone. Like you can just keep going. And also the other part is that you can make, you can, you know, as teachers, we're so flexible and we're listening to our students, no matter if we're remote or in the classroom. How easy is this to be able to really flow with what the students are asking? I mean, that becomes their learning, like you said earlier, their choice, their voice.
Right, and one of the things like that kind of came to mind with what you were saying was going back to the Cornell notes. So one of the things that the stories that I have is a high school teacher was saying, all of my students, they're writing all their Cornell notes. They look like they're great. I told you this story. It was my daughter's history teacher, world AP history teacher. And he was like, man, they're gonna rock it. And then he looked at their work, at their assessment, and he thought, where did we go wrong? So one of the great things that I thought about here is that he could, if he had used Cornell Notes within this digital platform, he could come to student progress. He could have the students' assessments right there, and he can say, Casey really bombed this. Let me go look at her Cornell Notes and see what's happening. And there's two things. One, he can see, you know what, Casey was right on in her Cornell Notes. She must not know how to use them. Or he might have noticed, hey, Casey's Cornell Notes are really pretty and have lots of tiny little details, but not the important stuff. So I need to have like a little mini lesson with her on what we're looking for when we're doing Cornell Notes. So either way, he has all of his students right here, so we could quickly look at their Cornell Notes and see how they align to their assessment grade and see where the gaps might be, which I think is really great.
Love it.
The last thing I kind of want to talk about really quickly, this is another game-based experience. I think right now, more than ever, but always, is important to give our students choice and voice. One of the ways that we can do that is through something called Flip Out. So we can have different cards and different tasks and help our students, and here I'll make this nice and big for us to see a whole group, although I know you can see it on your screen as well. So one of the things I like to do is give my students choices of different tasks to showcase their learning. But here's the important thing is we need to have them leverage their notes. So one of the big things would be, hey guys, if you're going to be using Scratch to create a program showing how glaciers move, I want to see evidence of what you learned from your notes in your programming, in your coding that you do. So that when I look at that student's project, I should be able to see, yeah, they got it. And I should see them having those notes up and active as they're creating a quiz or as they're creating a brochure. Whatever task they're doing, they should see, oh, I need to leverage those notes that I've been taking. And that's where students will see, oh, maybe my notes weren't as thorough because I don't see information about this that I need in order to build my Scratch program. And I think, Judy, that goes back to that talking piece, where if I'm starting to build a program about glaciers moving and I realize I think I have some gaps in my notes, then I can go have conversations with some students around the room and say, hey, here's what I have. What do you have? Because I think I'm missing something here.
Love that. Love that joint learning together.
Exactly. And again, right here, if I come back, if I was building this, here's my graphic organizer I just had. I can layer in this plus button. I have those game-based activities. So if I wanted to do a fill in the blank, it's right here, ready for me to build super fast and super quick. And then there's two ways that you can share to your students. We can share through our learning management system. So if you are using Google integration, which is what I'm using right now with Smart Learning Suite Online, I can do a share. I can click on a link and do a share or get shareable link for my students, or I can even add it to any LMS. I can add it to Google Classroom, Canvas, any of those, Schoology, all of those tasks. If you are in Suite.SmartTech, you also have the opportunity to click on these 3 lines and get a student share link. That allows students to work on this lesson independently, so I can assign this as something that they do. If I was doing a flipped classroom model, they could do it before class, before they come and see me the next day. If I wanted to give them a homework helpers, if I wanted this to be their homework even, I could do that by sharing that link either via Google Drive or suite.smarttech.com. So very easy for our students to share. When you do share a link with your students, they will sign in. So everything will save automatically. You will be able to open and see their work at any time. And the students will be able to continue to work on it when it makes sense for them. And it will automatically be set to student pacing, so they don't have to wait on you to move the page. So I hope that you saw some things that got your mind thinking about how you can use notes with your students. And I hope that you will participate in our challenge task. I hope that you'll take some time to import a PDF or PowerPoint or Google Slide, Google Doc, something that's more static, and import it to your Smart Learning Suite Online account. And then I would love for you to convert it to a handout so students can mark on it. You can even try that infinite cloner piece. If you want to stay for a couple minutes, I will show you how to do that. And then also work on adding some things like a shout out activity. Maybe have your students generate questions on a shout out activity. And then we have 2 great quiz tasks that are really fun. Take your students' questions that they generate in your shout out and create a monster quiz or a teen quiz for them to do as a review, maybe before their final assessment, something like that. Jody's going to put the challenge in the chat, and we encourage you to register for some of our other webinars that we have upcoming. I know next week, if you want to join us, we are doing Notebook and Smart Learning Suite Online go together like peanut butter and jelly. So if you have not really leveraged Smart Notebook, our software, you can learn more about Smart Notebook and then how you can then input it into Smart Learning Suite Online to create a lesson for your students as well. And then again, there's lots of other ones we have upcoming also. And then I will be here, Jody will be putting the link for that as well. I will be here to support you guys. You can reach out and email me at any time. Don't hesitate to reach out. Jody will add my email address to the chat for you to take down and reach out with questions. And then I'm happy to stay. I know we're a couple minutes over, but I'm happy to stay and answer any questions that you guys might have. I'm not in a rush to hang up. If anyone wants to linger and ask some specific directions on how to do things or just some questions in general, I know Jody and I are happy to address those.
And just so you know that I just put the link in for the survey, and if you need a PD certification, you need to fill out that survey, and then at the end it'll give you the link to that certification. There'll also be a follow-up email, and so pass the word along to your friends that we'd love to have you join us on every Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern time. But we're so glad that you were able to join, and like Casey said, we'll hang on for a few minutes just if you have questions. Love to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. If there are any questions in the chat, and we'll be happy to walk through them.
Oh yeah, we can talk to Joan about that. Joan, yeah. So Casey, I think this is a conversation we actually had as a team. Sometimes when they're in teacher mode, it doesn't progress on the student slides. Sometimes it has to do with networking. On the student side, Joan, and sometimes just refreshing helps doing that. Casey, do you have any other advice?
Yeah, usually just a lot of times it will have to do with the network. If there's a lot of people on devices, and depending on what the network situation is at a district. I know when I was teaching in our district, we had a district that was very proactive about caring about making sure that we had the best of the best. But even with the best of the best, it didn't always, the network wasn't always in our favor. So usually refreshing, I teach my kids, that's, a really good catch-all for them. Sometimes even signing out and then signing back in to their lesson, which is another reason why I really encourage you to have your students sign in to Hello Smart rather than just joining as a guest. Because if they sign out or they are kicked out or anything along those lines, when they sign back in, they all of their work saved. They don't have to start over. It's all right there for them to continue working on.
Yeah, so another question is, if students don't click done on the page, will that cause work to be unsaved?
No, so the done button is really, I love the done button, but the done button is really to help teachers know whether students are done. with their work. So it's really more on helpful for us as teachers. We will always be able to go in and see their work. There we go. So I'll always be able to go and see their work. And it's saved automatically. So if I closed this, I would still be able to come back in and be able to continue working. I can hit done, and that helps on the teacher side of things, but it doesn't necessarily impact the student's work at all. That's going to be saving no matter what.
Yeah. And if you do have any more questions that are not getting answered the way that you're like, oh, okay, that might not be what I was asking, I put in Casey's email and also myself, and we can help you problem solve and get down to that solution.
Absolutely.
Happy to help. Will the Shout It Out pages be saved? Can kids see the big board, you know, with your input, your teacher's input, Casey?
So the good news is the shout out does save. So like when I come and I review results, even if I close this and I open it next week, all of your responses will still be here and ready for me to work with, look at, all of those types of things. So that's really great. Now, if we wanted our students to have access to this image, one of the things Jody and I have been constantly on our developers about is, hey, we want students to be able to see the results on their screen. They hear us, they're working on it. I know that I don't know how many times we've been on them about this particular thing. But one of the great things I do is I like to take a screenshot of this, and I will often do one of two things. Like if I want to have this, I'll take a screenshot. If I want to have this, I can print it for my students so it can be glued into their interactive journals or something along those lines. Or I might take a screenshot and I might even add a workspace. So I could add a whiteboard, and I could make this a workspace, and I can actually add that image of that. So if I go like this, let's go get a copy of it. And I want my students to be able to see this and reference it later. What I'll do is I will come in here and I will make it a collaborative workspace. I'll make it a workspace where everybody's in the same space together. In just a minute. I think my networking is being slow now. Let me refresh right quick.
I want to also point out, just for those of you who are still on, as she's doing that, one of our newest features is the audio in SLSO. And how powerful is it that you can record on top of a shouted out activity, or on any of the game-based activity, or on any page? Like you can put an audio on every one of your pages if you really wanted to. But I think that is just so powerful of giving directions, instructions, maybe posing some really hypothetical situations, and now have students do a shout it out. Like I think the shout it out is with the audio is going to be huge. And like Casey was saying earlier about, you know, hopefully in the near future that shout it out will have more ways to leverage it with students. When it was originally created, it was in that moment learning for quick access to feedback instantly. And now that it's been around for a while, teachers are finding bigger and better things, and we hear you. So we're very excited to relay the messages that you need as a teacher. And one of those is to take that shout it out and let the students have access to all the great ideas.
Be able to move it and everything. But what I do in the meantime is I'll just add a blank page, make it a workspace, and put everyone on the same page. And what I can do then is notice I can add an image. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to go select that image that I have saved on my, here it is. So I can add that image. I can even resize it. So now my students will have this where they can see it. And they can't move any of the content, but they can see everything. So if they want to be able to look at this later as they're doing their homework or something along those lines, they have it ready to go.
And you really never had to leave any Smart Learning Suite online.
No, yes, I just took a quick snip of it, and then I was able to just add this blank page in the moment so my students could have access to it, and it's here and it's ready to go.
Love that idea, Casey. All right, so if there's any more questions, I think we've answered the ones that are in the chat, and we appreciate your involvement. If you have any more, you have our email, and we want to honor your time. So thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, do this brief survey feedback, and then you'll get your PD certificate at the end. But thank you so much for your great questions. And we enjoyed spending some time with you today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. You guys have a great rest of your week.